This is my Bachmann Easy Command Digital Control Center, and this is my one and only DCC locomotive. Today we're going to increase our DCC locomotive fleet by 100%. But the question is, which lucky loco gets the treatment? Hello YouTubes, today I'm going to convert one of my old DC locos to digital, and I'm going to use a Digitrax decoder. Now I wanted to first attempt this on something I'm familiar with, and so far that is the Athearn blue box locomotives. Relatively easy to work on, easy to maintain, parts are easy to find. So we need to choose out of my collection of old DC blue box Athearns which one we're going to attempt this surgery on. The two main criteria for this choice are, it has to be a good running motor and it has to be able to get round all the track I currently have. So I have opted for Big Blue Conrail. And just to prove he runs nice, pretty quiet, pretty smooth, and also I like this one because he does have the 6 axles but still gets round the whole track. So that's what we're doing today. Let us scrub in for surgery. I will also be adding LEDs front and back to this loco. Let us begin. Now, I'm actually quite surprised that this gigantic loco only has one bulb in it, and it sits right in there, even though we have glass, well, plastic glass round here, headlights here. But when you remove this shell, as I say, there's only one incandescent bulb that you can see through that window. It's also got plastic glass at the back for lights. Again, no bulb there either, so maybe they were just future-proofing it just for me. Right, let's go on with it. Great thing about Athearns are they're so easy to remove the shells. Generally, you've got 4 clips at the sides. I looked underneath because normally you can see the tabs underneath, but you don't see them here. It's got 4 little holes here with little lugs coming through, so 2 on each side, and that lifts off. Removing that, you will see the internals. Now, this is quite important when you're doing the Athearn decoder installation. This bar here connects the power from the rear truck, front truck to the positive side of the motor through this bar, which just unclips. Again, it's a really easy aspect of working on Athearns because you don't have any wires at all, which is really great. Not all Athearns obviously, but the Athearn blue boxes are generally laid out like this. Now the downside to the power bar is you're relying on a friction contact, if you like. Let me put that back on for a second. This is all old news if you've been working on these things for years, but it's relatively new to me. So the power connects from the rear truck to the positive side of the motor with this bar, but as you can see, it only connects it through this friction join. I'm just calling it a friction join because I don't know what it's actually called. So it does work, but it can lead to not the best of connections. So the plan, if I wasn't even adding a decoder, would be to remove this bar and solder a wire from there to there and solder a wire from there to the front, and that would give a more solid connection. But as I say, with the decoder we're going to do it slightly differently. This is my crappy little incandescent bulb that's getting removed. That comes off fairly easily. You've got a little clip there. Holds that in, bulb comes out. And this is actually your ground side to the whole thing. This goes to the chassis, goes all the way around, connects to the wheels on this side. So that's the negative to the chassis, goes up here, and the positive is this side, and it goes up there and there, ends up there. The grounding side is grounded to the bottom of the motor. So the way the decoder works is we have to isolate this motor from that ground, because the decoder is going to take the power directly from the positive and the negative. It'll go into the decoder and then send the power out to the motor, positive and negative. So let me show you how we're going to remove all of this. First thing I'm going to do is remove most of this grounding side bar, because really that is all just to hold the bulb in position and make the connection between the positive and negative of the bulb from there to the positive on the front truck. So let's cut this off all the way back to there, because I'm still going to use this bar for the negative side of the whole connection. There are other ways you could do this. You could drill a little hole into the chassis itself, thread it, add a little screw, but you know, if the ground bar is already there, I might as well use it. So that gets that out of the way, and it still have a connection to ground. Next we're going to remove both the trucks, because we need to take these drive shafts out and then lift the motor out. Holding in the trucks, you've got a clip there. Make sure you do that so that you have to go and search for it on the floor. Anyway, that allows that to disconnect from the worm gear. The truck drops out like that. Give me a second, let me go and get that before I lose it. Put that somewhere safe. Move that to the side. Don't need that for now, but I will be cleaning this up with my fiberglass pencil later to get a good solder on there. Now we can remove that drive shaft. It slides out there. It's got a little keyway on it. Same for the other side. And this time, hopefully, I won't ping it across the floor. That's what happens when you try to be careful and show people what you're doing. Unclip there. Held on to it this time. Worm gear out. Drive shaft out. Truck removed. Okay, almost down to the bare bones. We need to get this motor out. Now, what we're going to do is we're actually going to swap this copper bar for the copper bar at the bottom, and you'll find out why I'm going to do that once I get it out. In order to get this out, I've seen a couple of different ways of doing this. You can push those. You see those little white stubs? You can push them through, or sometimes you can just wiggle this out and it'll come out. But I don't want to break this, because then I'll have to get a new one. There's basically two of these white mounts. It's not one complete thing going all the way across. There's one on each side. One side out. Actually, might not need to take them both out. Do you see this down here? It's a little metal tab, which is not actually in the best of condition, but that is what connects the chassis to the bottom of the motor. And you see the copper strip I was talking about? It's got these little tangs sticking up, which create the connection of the ground of the motor to the chassis. Like so. We're wanting to isolate that from the chassis itself. And here's what I was saying before. The overall length of this bar is exactly the same as the top. So what I'm going to do is swap that one for that one. I can flatten these down, or I can solder my new wires onto these little tangs. What you do need to be careful with though is under here and here, you've got your spring and brushes connecting to your commutator. So Let me try and get these off without them springing across the floor. And I don't mind if these come out because I'm going to be cleaning everything anyway. Let's put that over there. Let's see if the brush wants to come out. If it doesn't come out, that's fine. Just make sure I don't lose it. It's weird, it's actually got a... It's almost like a screw head, flathead screw head in the top, which is really weird. Normally they're just flat. Now, I want to get that out because I want to give it a good clean. Wow, it's the biggest brush I've ever seen. Anyway, it just needs a bit of a clean, nothing major. Let's get the other side out. Careful not to lose your spring. One spring. Let's get this brush out. Also huge. That's funny. I guess it would last for many years because it would take a long time for that to wear down. And just for talking's sake, I've forgotten which way is up and which way is down. Okay, this is down because this is where the... I think this is where the mounts go in there. That makes sense? Yes. So that's the bottom. So we will be putting the flat bar there and this one at the top. Just let's make sure it does indeed fit. It's quite a tight fit, but that's okay. You want it tight. Let's go this way because we need to make sure that that spring is held down with the brush. So we'll use the flat side of this bar. Let me just double check with the other side because that looks like it's not wanting to fit. So this will now be the bottom. Yeah, it's okay, it will fit, it's just pretty tight, which is fine. So I'm going to have to kind of stretch that across. Oh, I know what it is. It's these plastic bits have moved out a bit. You see that? Make sure they're squashed right in. So that'll be going on the bottom. Squash that in, push that down. And now we don't have those tines reaching down to the bottom of the chassis. But I do want to add a bit of tape along there, maybe a bit of tape along there, just to make sure that that does not make contact with the chassis of the Loco. Right, let me get that taped up, spring back in, obviously brush cleaned up, same on the top, and move on to the next bit. Right, that's all my contacts clean. A commutator, not computator, that's a different thing completely. I can't say that word. You know what I mean. That's clean. These are clean. And my brushes are clean. Before I put it together though, and obviously I've got my little bit of tape there just so that this bar doesn't make contact with that surface. Right, before I actually put it together though, I'm going to have to solder on just a little bit of wire because now that we have removed that grounding from the body, we need somewhere to ground this bottom brush once this clip's attached. So I am going to solder just a little black wire from the end of this, and it's only going to be about 2 inches long. And I will show you where that goes later when it comes to the decoder section, but for now I just want all this together. So we need a little dab of flux there, little dab of flux there. A little bit of solder. I should probably tin this wire first. Probably won't make much difference, to be honest. But no harm in doing this at all. Bit of tinning there. Might as well add a bit of solder to this section as well. And a bit of wire. Just like so. So now we can reassemble. Got my nice clean brush in the bottom. I suppose this is where it comes in handy for having the screw head, because now I can rotate that, because it is curved on the I'm going to struggle with that word all day. Commutator. So the brush is curved around there. Get the spring in. And I can put my clip in. This is the forward section, I believe, which is where I want the wire. Again, you will see why I need the wire there later. Oh, that's interesting. I just noticed that this bar is actually shaped. You see how it's got that on one side but not on the other, which would make it much easier for that side to go on last. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to remove that and put it on the other side, because that makes life a whole lot easier if it's on the other side. Remove that. Bit of flux. Bit of solder. And get this back on. Okay, this should make sense now, guys. Still got my brush in the right place. Spring in. And this should now clip over there first. And now it should just actually push down and clip in. Like so. Okay, so that's important to remember and not mess up like I did. When you're decoding, solder your little wire onto the section with the extended curvy section on that bar, not that section. Okay, so this wire will come up to here somewhere. I've left it quite long because I'll be trimming it down to shape. Right, let me get the other clip on and get it back in the chassis. Surprisingly, it came out fast. It came out easier than it was going back in. This is the hardest part of the whole process, trust me. Almost there, almost there. Excuse me, I'm just going to rock it a little bit. I was not expecting this part to be so tricky. Okay, we're in, finally, right. Whew. Let's get the front and rear trucks back in. Oh. Just going to give this top section a bit of a scrape because I will be soldering a connection onto that. Same in the rear. And these are your positive pickups, remember? Right, and get him back in there. You see that hole there? There's a pole, whatever. There's something that comes down there, locates in that hole. So that goes in first. Now I can put in my drive shaft. Again, it's notched, it only goes in one way. Tweezers. Clip over the top. Just like that. So our truck is back in. Just going to spin this, make sure the wheels still turn, which they do. Put the other side in. And clip on the top. You know what I should do? I should put a bit of lube in there. And of course I'll need to take the other side off and do that. Right, finally I can move on to the fun stuff. Before I add the decoder, I do want to add the LEDs to the shell because they're not going to be attached to the main body, the main chassis. The LEDs are not going to be attached to this, they're going to be attached to this and they're going to be connected with a little wire connector. So let me get these LEDs fitted first. I am going to be using these pre-resistor soldered 12 volt LEDs. Now I have been using the non-resistored LEDs like this, but since I'm only adding white LEDs I might as well use these, plus they're nice and small, which is much better for this style of loco. I've been adding the bigger LEDs to the F series, which have got a giant headlight. These have got tiny little headlights there and there. So this will go down there and this one will go round about there, and I will also install one at the back, probably pointing down the way like that. So I'm not going to bore you with that because I'll probably be using the glue gun and everything to attach all these. I'll show you the end result, but these will all tie together with the wire connectors. I'm going to be using these, which are basically just male to female. I'll choose the right colours, cut them down to size, should be fine. Right, we'll see in a sec. Okay, I've got all my wiring done and my LEDs fitted. You may notice I've got them colour coded. I've got a white wire here, blue wire, yellow wire. I suppose you want to see if they work. I want to see if they work too. Now I've converted 6 wires into 3, and I will go through that why I've done the colour coding. It is part of the decoder thing, but everyone's LEDs are going to be different, so that's why I didn't go into great detail about that. But basically the blue coming from the decoder is going to be the positive, and it's a common positive, which is weird. And the yellow is the rear, white is the front. So if I hook up the white and the blue, I should get light. and it's bright. If I hook up the blue and the yellow, that should be the back light coming on. Blue to the positive, yellow to the negative. Light at the back. So I know they work, or at least I've wired them the way you're supposed to wire them for this decoder. So let's put this decoder in finally. So installing a decoder does seem quite intimidating at first with all these wires going everywhere. But essentially what we're just doing is, instead of the track power going straight to the motor, you've got the track power, 2 wires as normal go into the decoder, and then 2 wires come out of the decoder going to the motor. So that's 4 of those wires just to power the motor. The other wires that I mentioned before, the blue wire is the common positive for all the lights. The white wire is for the front light, negative, and the yellow wire is for the rear light, negative. So that's 3 of the wires. The red wire and the black wire is the power coming from the track. So that's 2 wires out of the way. And the orange wire and the grey wire is the positive negative going to the motor. And these 2 wires in this particular decoder aren't used, so we can just snip them off. So we know where all the wires are going to and from. They don't need to be this long, obviously, so I'll be trimming them down as we go. So let's get at it. One thing that a lot of people are concerned about is, where do you stuff all these wires? Bear in mind, I've got wires in there for the lights. I'm going to have wires on a decoder sitting here. You don't want them fouling up your drive line at all. So I discovered this little item on Thingiverse, which is a 3D print file. And what happens is this clips over your motor and gives you a little platform to put your decoder, and the wires have got less of a chance of fouling up on your driveline, which is awesome. I just need to decide how I'm going to attach this. This can overhang this way a little bit, so I'll probably mount it that way around. And this can unplug, by the way. It's not a one-piece thing. This is just your wiring harness. You know what, I'm not going to unplug it. I'll end up breaking the pins, but this comes away from your chip. So let us begin by removing the wires we don't need, which was the green and the purple. And it's not like I can wire them up to do something on this, because there's nothing in the decoder for those wires. It's just a generic harness with generic pins, so don't worry about that. I'm not losing out on anything. Right, what we start with, will we go with the black? No, I tell you what we need to start with. We need to run power, or a red wire, to go from the front pickup to the rear pickup. Because when we take a feed from the right side of the power wire, I want it to be able to connect front and back. So eventually there'll be a wire coming from the decoder to this, which is picking up power from the front and the back if I use this wire. So let me quickly solder this on. And the great thing about this little thing, it's got a nice little hole through the structure. So I can feed that all the way through, like so. And it again just keeps it out of the way of the mechanism. And I want to leave enough room on this wire for these to rotate. They don't need a lot of room. So let's go with, actually, you know what? Let's put one on first. There, heat up my soldering iron. This will be easier if I do this first. And I've already cleaned these surfaces, so we're good for that. Bit of flux on my wire. I'm trying to keep the bare wire to a minimum. Not quite hot yet. Come on. There we go. Okay, I'm going to have to turn up my soldering iron because this is going to take a lot of heat to melt the solder on top. I'll turn it back down for the fine stuff. It doesn't need to be way up. It's 700 just for soldering little wires together. Let's try that again. That's better, nice and shiny. I think what I'll do is I'll just bend this wire up that way so that it sits kind of like that. Front one on, let's feed it through its little tunnel. Make sure it's got enough wiggle room. That should do it there. Bit of tinning. Needs a bit of solder on there. And I'll do the same. I'll bend this. Let's go, yeah, let's bend it that way. So that it sits like that. Yeah, makes sense? Makes sense to me. Okay, next then, let's decide how short all these wires need to be. Now, I've already cut the black wire because I'm a fool, and because that wire's black and this wire's black, I was thinking that they go together, but they do not. This black wire has to get its negative pickup from the front, which is attached to the chassis, if you remember. It's a bit wobbly, not keen on that. And it's also very close to that truck. Let me just bend it up a little bit. It's better. So yes, this black wire here has to connect to this, which is connected to the whole chassis, which is connected to both sides of these trucks. So that only needs that one connection there, whereas this red one has to connect to the front one. The front positive there. Okay, so yeah, because I'm an idiot, I'll need to just make a little bit of wire that goes from there to there. And then the other two that go to the motor is the grey and the orange. The grey goes to the negative, so the grey goes to that black one, and the orange goes to this centre one. So it can be pretty short, so we'll snip that while we know what we're doing with that one. Okay, so orange will be going to this bar, grey will be going to the black, so I can snip that quite short too. And I think we can get them all on just now, because the other three are the speaker wires, and we can decide how long we're going to make these connectors. So let me get these all on first. You know what I think I'll do? I think I will attach this. I think I'll just try a bit of hot glue. That's what we'll do. Hot glue gun. See if that works. Give that a minute to warm up. Meanwhile, I'll get on with the soldering. Right, my glue should be warm enough. Yeah, I think that's going to work just fine. Still enough wiggle room. Oh yeah, it barely needs to move at all, that wire. Okay, so I need to make a little bit of wire to go from there to there. Might as well use the bit I cut off. And it doesn't need to move, so it can be fairly tight. Oh, it's definitely needing a lot to warm this up. There we go. Okay, so that is the negative black wire going to the black of the decoder. Positive coming from the track. So this red wire also needs to go down and attach to that one. God, what's going on with this? Far too much. You know what, I'm going to invest in one of those little flux resin pen things. Saves a bit of mess. Okay, yep, still got enough articulation. So according to the instructions then, left side, fireman's power pickup apparently, which is this, goes to the black, which I've done. Red, which is engineer's power pickup, coming from the right hand side, which is now connected to the rear as well as the front, goes to the red in. Okay, so now I've already attached the grey to the black, so now we need to attach the orange to the positive of the motor pickup. And I'm going to use one of these little tangs that we didn't bend flat, which is fine, it raises it up a little bit. Just making sure, yep, orange goes to the positive, which is there. Lovely. So now we just have the light plugs. So we need to decide how short we can get away with. I think pretty short is going to be the answer. But even without the lights, if you weren't going to attach any lights, then that's it. That's the wiring. You've got 4 wires basically. You've got your ground or negative of the track coming in. You've got the positive of the track coming in. Positive of the track going to the motor. Negative of the track going to the motor. So that's the 4 wires plus your lights. Right, let me get these lights sorted. I am going to go for, well, it doesn't matter actually. I'll make them this short for now because all we're doing is adding in the plug at the end. Actually, let's go even shorter. I'm going to just turn my soldering iron down while I remember, because I really don't need it this hot. For tiny wires, take it right down to 500. Okay. Strip, strip, strip. Add some heat shrink before I forget. One there. There. And the white. Bit of flux. Bit of tinning. That really just stops all the strands from unraveling. Right, so these can be pretty short as well. As long as I've got access to unplug them. Because the less wire you've got inside your loco, the better. I think you would agree. So we'll get this one on. Yellow to yellow. And white to white. Sorry for the creaking chair. It's not my back, honestly. And we're done. And that's as neat as I could do it. But we don't have anything that's going to foul my motor. That one's sticking out enough, I believe. And the top one, that should be fine. The back one's fine. It's just whether or not we've got enough room in here. Once we plug all these into there, we can cram it all together. Let's find out. So, let's see. Yellow to yellow. Blue to blue. Yeah, I think I've left just enough room to make this relatively simple to reach, because I do want to be able to remove this if I ever want to service my motor. And we're all connected. I think I would rather have these wires going that way rather than that way. Yeah, something like that. Just checking for anything getting filled. I think I'm just getting some resistance from that little mount that I put in, hitting the sides of the loco. I think we've got enough room for all the wires. That side's in. That side is almost in. I think everything's hitting the top. They still move. They still move. Squash it down. And we're done. I suppose we better put it in the track, see if it works. It's the first one I've done, by the way. I think it went not too bad. Sorry if it was a bit long, but I think we'll make up for that length of video if it actually works. Let's find out. So I've made sure that my other DCC loco is not on the track so that I don't confuse this when I program it, if it works. Okay, we are on the track. Oh goodness, this is terrifying. So apparently the decoder is set by default to number 3. Let's switch this to DCC and see what happens. Nothing so far, that's fine, because we don't want it to make noises until we activate it, which should be number 3. If I press function and then 10, light should come on. So far so good. I wonder if the back light comes on. So I'm thinking, because the front and back were wired differently, then the light will only come on at the back when it's going backwards. Okay folks, let's see if this works. Forward position, power up. It's doing something. Well, it's making noise. And it's moving. I have impressed myself. So let's try it in reverse. I'm going to go backwards and look at that, the light comes on. Change it to forwards. Oh, and the light comes on. I'm a pure genius, me. Really happy with that. The question is, can I now run 2 DCC locomotives on the same track at the same time, going in different directions? Let's have you pointing backwards. Oh, come on. Right. So let's see, he is number 1. Now I've noticed with this one, and this is a straight off the shelf with DCC. If I hit the lights for number 1, function lights, you'll notice the back light comes on as well as the front light. My fancy one doesn't do that. He only has his lights on in the direction he's going. Okay, so let's hopefully send this off in that direction, which will be backwards. Oh, stop that from flashing. Nope. Oh, you know what? I got confused there because it's DCC. That means forward. So if it's facing that way, then that's forward. I'm so used to a DC where that's not how it works. So now you should go forward. So he's off. Change it to number 3 for this loco. And he's going forward. And off he goes. So he's going that way. And he's going that way. Fantastic. And we've got a derailment. I guess I didn't put them on the track properly. Let's bring number 1 back. Number 1. Backwards. Look at that mess I need to clean up. Awesome. Let's rescue this one. I really hope that I haven't messed something up because he was running perfectly before this experiment. I'm sure it just wasn't on the track properly. He was number 3. Reverse. Job done. So I have one more decoder and it's going in this beauty. This needs a bit of work because it's got all its details to get added, so I'll maybe do that first. No, actually no. I'll do the decoder first so that I don't break all the detail I just add to it. And I should be able to do it a bit quicker than that one, but hey, it was my first attempt and I got it right. Eventually, there was a couple of edits in the video, shall we say. Really happy with that. And I'm already thinking, ooh, sound decoder would be good, but then you need speakers, so you need space inside, and I don't have a lot of space in this style, you know, the skinnier freight trains. Probably work fine in the my big PA1 passenger locomotives would be awesome with sound. Getting ahead of myself. Thanks for watching, everyone. And I hope that wasn't too confusing for you all, for all of you. I'm away to play with DCC trains. 2 of them. Bye.